In today's tutorial, we'll be going through what makes a good essay. And the reason we want to understand what a good essay is that we want to practice writing essays the right way. We want to avoid writing essays incorrectly, as that would lead to bad writing habits. So why do we want to study for Section 2, besides getting a good GAMSAT score? Well, Section 2 is by far the easiest section to study for, and therefore the highest study yield. In terms of study material, it's a collection of writing tips that you can get online, Professor Grayling's The Meaning of Things, and any other newspaper articles that you might come across. As you go through these materials, you can also practice for Section 1 by building an understanding of literature and building advanced vocabulary. This is why I say it's high yield. The other reason you should spend more time on Section 2 is if you're planning on including the University of Queensland and the University of Sydney in your applications. These universities use unweighted GAMSAT scores, which means Section 2 is just as important as Section 3. Stated another way, if you're planning on spending 10 hours on Section 3 study, you should be spending as much time on Section 2 study. And by study, I mean both reading as well as writing. The best way to write good essays is to read good essays, and not just passive reading, but by actively reading. This means bearing in mind specific things and performing a literary analysis on the passages. So let's set some study goals to apply when reading study material. Things to keep in mind while reading include the essay structure, also the feel, tone, and direction the writer is trying to express. Other things you want to do is to note down unique words in your word bank and unique quotes or examples in your quote bank. It's not enough to note them down, you would have to actively recall them frequently, because the only way you can use them on test day is if you know them by heart. There is more impact if you can mention specific names of people, i.e. Socrates or Churchill, rather than saying someone once said. These are examples of words I've put in my word bank. Words with exclamation marks are words that I think will have a big impact on essay quality, and I've dedicated time to recite them every few days. My list was just over 100, and I could recall at least 50 of them on most days. Like I said before, if you can't remember them, you can't use them on test day. Here's an example of some of my quotes, which I've included in my quote bank. And just like the word bank, you want to be able to recite these quotes as well as the people who they're attributed to. Similar to a quote bank, you want to build an example bank, and things that would be good to include are historical events like the Crusades or the atrocities of World War II. Other things to include are psychological or fundamental frameworks like Maslow's hierarchy of needs or the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So our initial study would be more about reading and analysis, and then after we have to practice writing good essays. By the end of this process, you want to be able to write about anything confidently and apply the word and example banks that you have curated in any essay. If you can't seem to apply your word or example bank, you would have to revise your material. Lastly, Acer has two essay auto-scoring services available on their website. And when you feel like you're halfway through your Section 2 study, you want to attempt one of these in order to garner feedback about what you've learned. You should also take these under exam conditions, meaning 30 minutes per essay and handwritten. You can then transcribe it and copy it into the system for marking. The second attempt should be taken closer towards your test date to confirm you're all polished up. This was part 1 of the series, and in part 2, I'll be going through some useful resources that would help get you started. I would also be analyzing an essay from Professor Anthony Grayling's book, The Meaning of Things.